stirred up a lot more than I expected. So anyway, what's up, guys? So I've done a top 5 things I dislike about the CRF250f, and now it's time to go over some of the things I do like. And I planned on kind of riding around the back of this field, and I don't want to do that now as much as it's stirred up. So anyway, we're going to jump right in it. Ease of maintenance and ownership. So whether you're a more experienced rider or whether you're new to dirt bikes altogether, the Honda, being just an air-cooled trail bike, is going to be about as easy to maintain as you possibly get. There's one caveat to that. There's one thing they could have done to make maintenance a little easier with the valves, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's an air-cooled engine. It's a reliable air-cooled engine. There's I know of at least one person who has over 600 hours on their engine, and all they've done is oil change and valve adjustments. So it's a very simple bike to maintain. You change the oil on a regular basis and change the oil filter, keep the air filter clean, and it's just going to last forever. So if you're new to dirt bikes and you're maybe potentially a little worried about maintenance, don't be, at least not with this bike. It's about as simple as it can get. That caveat being the valves. It does have the puck style valve shims as opposed to adjustable like lock nut tappets. That is one thing that Honda could have done that would make valve adjustments easier, but it could have also affected the performance figures they were looking to get out of this engine. So that's neither here nor there. Valve adjustments should be very minimal. For example, the guy on the form with 600 hours says that he has checked his valves multiple times, but they've only ever been out of spec and needed adjustment once in 600 engine hours. So that's fantastic. Alright, so moving on from ease of maintenance would be the electronics on this bike. So it is fuel injected, which is great, especially for newer riders who don't have any experience dealing with carburetors, having to clean carbs or anything like that. So the fuel injection is nice, and another thing to go along with that is the rest of the electronics for the bike. So what do I mean by that? Well, when you compare it to some of the other bikes in this adult-sized air-cooled class, specifically the new Kawasaki 230R, KLX 230R, one of the reasons that I wasn't interested in that bike is because it has some weird electronics. That being that it is like when you pull the clutch in first gear, because they're assuming that bike's going to be ridden by mostly newer, less experienced riders, it tries to do things for you. So you pull the clutch in first gear and it automatically revs the engine so that when you ease back out of the clutch, it's not going to stall as easily. And it's just something that's not really necessary. I don't even think it's necessary for new beginner riders. Within just minutes really, but definitely within the first couple hours of you learning to ride, managing the clutch is something should get a hang of pretty quick. So having that, I hate to say useless, but useless electronics like that, it's just not great, in my opinion. I just didn't want to fool with anything like that. And so if you want just a true dirt bike experience without all the extra funky little electronic systems trying to control stuff for you, the CRF250f is great for that. Moving on, another thing I like about it is the price point. So if personally, I would not buy one of these new. I was interested in one, in getting one, and I did not entertain for a split second buying one new. I just waited. I live in the southeast. It may be different for area where you live, but there was plenty to choose from. Now that they've been out a few years, and there was just no need to waste any extra money buying new. Even if you are buying new, the price point is still pretty good, but you know, being able to pick one up for under $5,000. I live in Alabama, a state that does not require me to register any off-road vehicle or machine, so I had no taxes to pay or anything like that. Someone else has already paid all that stuff when they bought it new, so that's fantastic. Every state should be that way in my opinion for off-road vehicles, but I digress. The price point is good on these machines for what you get: Honda reliability, and all the other positives that I've already mentioned, and you get it for, in my opinion, a pretty good price point, especially if you can find a good deal on one used. Like I said, sub $5,000 should be pretty easy to do. Your area depends. Another thing that I love about this bike, I can't remember if we're on 3 or 4, or it doesn't even really matter, but it's just a great play bike. So even though it has some shortcomings that I've mentioned in my things I dislike or hate about this bike, it's still a great bike, just good all-around play bike. It's a little heavy, but aside from that, you can still throw it around very well. The weight is pretty low on this machine, as far as down low on the bike. It's not top heavy or anything like that. So if you're a newer rider, once you start getting a little confidence, you will be able to handle this bike physically very well. It's fairly low seat height. I'm 5'7", and I can get both feet almost, I don't know if you can see this, almost flat on the ground. And I do have the rear shock preload adjusted up a little bit, giving the seat height an extra fuzz of height to it, but again, still very comfortable bike height wise for new riders, while still being a big enough play bike for full-grown adults to play on. So just all around easy to maneuver. The geometry on it's good. I'm no expert rider, but I can't break down the geometry for you and why it's good, or what they've done to make it so good. But it's just easy to flick around and ride. If you're a more experienced rider and you've rode some other taller bikes, true motocross bikes, just having something a little shorter and lower to the ground does make it easy to maneuver and easier to flick around, and that is great. Alright, one of the last things I will talk about with this bike, one of the things I like about it is the aftermarket support. So while it's not the greatest on the market, more or less anything you want or need for this bike from the aftermarket world you can get. So skid plates, suspension components. I know that's one of the shortcomings that I mentioned, just about everyone mentions in their videos. Suspension components, you got a couple different options. Companies making things for it. You can do just simple drop-in springs and heavier oil, and just do that on your own and come out pretty cheap and pretty adequately improve the suspension. Or you can spend much bigger bucks, go with something like Bruce's suspension, where he completely emulators, make adjustments or changes to the dampening rod setup. So really, as far as the front suspension is concerned, you've got a lot of options, and that goes for most of the bike. There's, I wouldn't say a ton of, say, exhaust options, but there are multiple exhaust options out there if you want to do aftermarket exhaust. Skid plate, there's 3 companies I know of making skid plates for it. You've got one plastic like I have, and then you've got an aluminum, and another company makes a stainless steel. So you've got some options there that give you different price points, and also you know, you just choose whichever one you want based on looks, or whichever one you think is going to provide the most protection, or whichever one fits your budget. So just whatever suits you. In the aftermarket world, this bike, for the most part, is going to have enough. You know, most any bike from the big manufacturers is going to be this way, especially once it gets a few years into its production run, which is where we're at now with the Honda. We're a few years in. I think this bike came out in 2019. It could have released in 2019 as a 2020. I'm not positive off the top of my head, but anyway, we're at least 4 years into our production run of this machine, and so that's going to give aftermarket manufacturers and parts suppliers time to get things ironed out and sorted, and that leaves you with a good range of aftermarket accessories. So I'm sure there's plenty of other things that I haven't mentioned here, but again, just trying to name off roughly 5 things that I like about the bike, reasons why I might have chose it. There's many more. It's just a great little bike. If you're in the market, whether you're a beginner or experienced rider, and you're wanting a simple air-cooled bike, something that's not going to require a ton of maintenance, something that's not super loud like a 2-stroke or a motocross style 4-stroke that's maybe going to make the neighbors mad if you're putting around on your property the way I am here today, then yes, it's a great machine. It's no race bike. You can race it. I've done it. I've raced it in an arena cross race and plan to do some hair scramble enduro style races on it as well, and you can do that. You're not going to be setting no lap records on it, but especially with a little tuning and aftermarket modification, like I said, to the front suspension, it'll become a more capable bike, and definitely has room to grow, leaves you with room to grow as a rider. So if you're in the market for an air-cooled bike for whatever reason, these are some reasons that I would suggest you look into the Honda. So until next time,